Acharya ji, I am reading the Ashtavakra Gita. Please throw some light on these. So, she has shared a couple of excerpts. The excerpt comes from the book Commentaries on Ashtavakra Gita by this speaker, and she is quoting from chapter 5 titled The Real Meaning of Meditation. Practice of meditation means acquired knowledge about meditation. It will not help because the acquirer of that knowledge itself is the bondage. Then, another quote, it requires something beyond words, maybe a particular presence for the words to have an effect. They are mere words, things, methods expressed in words. The touch of the special is missing, the aliveness is missing. Okay. Related to this, she asks, what is the relevance of Ashtanga Yoga in general and specifically Asan, Kriyas, Pranayam, Dharana? What is your opinion on Hatha Yoga and the thought that Hatha Yoga prepares one for Raj Yoga? The mind, the body. Their relation and their effect upon each other. In general, the mind has an effect on the state of the body. If man were perfect and were living perfectly, then the source, the mind, and the body would have been in perfect alignment and agreement with each other. Life, activity, and existence would have proceeded seamlessly from the source to the mind and from the mind to the body. From the heart to the mind to the limbs. After all, the mind is nothing but the source expressing itself subtly. And the body is nothing but the mind expressing itself grossly. So, in a perfect sense, these three should be one. But they are not. There is nothing ideal, there is nothing perfect in this world, in the perceiver of the world. So the mind affects the body. Working on the mind, observing directly the movements, patterns, inclinations, compulsions, and tendencies of the mind has an effect on one's life, action, and behavior. That is the path of realization. But that is a slightly difficult path. Not many have the insight to look directly at their thoughts and tendencies. Though, if practiced, it would be the shortest path. Look at thought itself, and actions, behavior, and life would change. Many of us, most of us, live at a gross level of existence. Our minds have lost the reflective capacity to look at themselves. So the mind keeps looking outwards at gross objects. That's the situation with most people. Their mind is busy looking outwards at gross objects. It cannot look at itself. When it cannot look at itself, how will it know what's going on within it? So the mind looks outwards at things, objects, worlds, and gets affected by them. We began with saying that the body should operate as per the mind, and it does. But in most people, there is traffic the other way as well. The mind operates as per the body and the world. The mind operates as per gross objects. Body too is a gross object. This is called conditioning of the mind. So mind is looking at the conditions prevailing in the world and operating as per them. That is conditioning. You look at how the world is, and what you look at changes you. You become conditioned. The condition outside becomes your state. And when I say outside, that includes gross objects, including the body. So the condition of the mind in most people gets affected a lot by the condition of their body. This is called conditioning. So the people who are prone to conditioning, victims of conditioning, remain highly dependent on the condition of their body. Are you getting it? If you are prone to conditioning, you will remain dependent on conditions. You will remain dependent on conditions, and all external conditions are perceived by your body. So when we say you are dependent on conditions, let's say you are dependent on the temperature outside. Now you do not know what the temperature outside is. You actually only know the temperature of your own skin. Even to know the temperature of the air outside, you depend on your own skin. So fundamentally, the conditioned mind is depending on the condition of his own body. When I say body, I also mean
the stuff that the body absorbs through the senses, through the eyes, through the ears, all kinds of inputs. So, what is the state of the conditioned mind? It becomes highly dependent on the body. The state of the body conditions it. Is that clear? Hatha Yoga makes use of this phenomena. Hatha Yoga says, now I know that this mind gets heavily affected by the condition of the body because this mind is prone to conditioning. So Hatha Yoga says, fine, you do get conditioned, so I'll change the conditions. After all, you do get conditioned. So what will I do? As a method to liberate you from the conditions, I will begin with the conditions. I will change the conditions. Hatha Yoga uses a change in conditions as a liberator from the conditions, as a method to liberate you from the conditions. So Hatha Yoga says, fine, let's change the conditions. Let's change the body. The mind has become rigid and stubborn. Fine. Let's turn the body flexible. If you turn the body flexible, then because the mind is dependent on the body, the mind too will become little flexible, a little receptive. Oh, the body has become fat. It has accumulated a lot of unnecessary mass. So let's reduce the mass from the body. The mind is dependent on the body. The mind too will lose its unnecessary mass. What is the unnecessary mass of the mind? Old habits, memories, patterns. The body has become lazy, so the mind too has become lazy. What is the laziness of mind called? Tamsa. Let's reduce the laziness of the body. Let's get things moving. If the laziness of the body goes, the laziness of the mind too reduces. When the mind is agitated, the breath too gets agitated. Let's normalize the breath. Let's give some depth to breathing. And because the mind depends on the body, when the breath gets all right, the mind also tends to get all right. That's the principle on which all Hatha Yoga operates, and even techniques like pranayama, etc. from Ashtanga Yoga. Getting it? So far, so good. Now comes the catch. Hatha Yoga says, because the mind gets affected by the body, so let's change the body and cleanse the mind. Right? For Hatha Yoga to succeed, the mind must remain dependent on the body, which means the mind must remain prone to conditioning. Now that's a problem. For Hatha Yoga to be useful, the principle that the mind gets conditioned by the world must hold true. Are you getting it? But what is the objective of Hatha Yoga? To bring the mind to a point where it is no longer prone to conditioning. So Hatha Yoga can succeed only till a point. Please get the point. Hatha Yoga proceeds by making use of the vulnerability of the mind towards the bodily conditions. The objective of Hatha Yoga is to reduce the vulnerability of the mind towards the bodily conditions. And it makes use of the body to reduce that vulnerability. But if the vulnerability is actually reducing, then Hatha Yoga will fail. because then change in body will not affect the mind. Are you getting it? So Hatha Yoga, as you keep practicing it, will give you great returns till a point, and then will become incrementally useless for you. Because it can succeed only as long as you are prone to conditioning. And if you are still prone to conditioning, has your practice of yoga succeeded? No, it has failed. Who is the real yogi? Whose mind is no longer dependent on external conditions. If your mind is still dependent on how your body is doing, then are you a yogi? So Hatha Yoga is wonderful as something to start with, but it cannot take you to the destination, because it makes use of the same thing that it seeks to eliminate. What does it make use of? Your corruptibility. It makes use of your vulnerability. It makes use of exactly the same thing that it seeks to eliminate. So either it will keep succeeding and not succeed, or if it is failing, then no point continuing with it. If Hatha Yoga is working wonders on you, it means you are still vulnerable towards the body. Do you see this? Means you are doing stuff with your body, and that is calming down your mind. Good that you are doing stuff with your body and that is calming down the mind. And bad because it means that your mind is dependent on the body. And if your mind actually starts gaining freedom from the body, then Hatha Yoga will start failing. That's the limitation with Hatha Yoga. And that is why it has been rightly said that Hatha Yoga is just a preparatory step for real yoga. You cannot use it as a lifelong thing. You cannot use it as the real thing. It is just an external preparation for the real inner work. It is in that sense not real yoga. In fact, if you go to the central text of Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it says right at the outset that Hatha Yoga is for beginners who later on want to enter into advanced yoga. If you have no intention to have real yoga, which is real mystical union with the self, then Hatha Yoga would at most give you some bodily gains, and yes, possibly and probably some calmness of the mind that comes with the bodily gains. Not much beyond that.